Welcome everyone who is just joining us. This is the Lincoln Public Library's virtual thriller authors panel. We're going to get started in just a moment. We're going to let everybody trickle in from the waiting room into the webinar. So welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
I love when you say this afternoon. I'm in Boston. So I think that's over. It's not afternoon. What did I miss? What just happened? It's so strange.
Which is the most amazing part about Zoom and kind of the rise of this is being able to hold conversations with people in so many different places.
Yeah. Cool. It's always fun to see who's so put in the chat where you're from, you all. That's always fun to see.
Oh, Catlaw's here. I just spotted Catherine Catlaw, as we call her on First Chapter Fun.
That has been the thing, you know, we've met so many people that we wouldn't ordinarily have met, you know, in this so extraordinary time. All of our spheres have gotten so much bigger because of this disaster. And we're talking to people that we wouldn't have even met. Hannah and I had our pictures taken together at BoucherCon in Dallas, and I don't remember it at all. And one of our, Jen Jumba sent us a photo of ourselves. And I thought, I see that that's me, but I don't remember that. And so knowing Hannah from online has been really extraordinary, and that just wouldn't have happened. So
there have been
and
so
here's Aaron
many
from my hometown of Indianapolis. Welcome, Aaron.
There have been so many different stabs at online events, and you guys have done so well with First Chapter Fun.
Oh,
You have such a rabid little group of devoted viewers for that. It's awesome.
Well, this is all Hannah. I mean, she started it like day one of the pandemic. And we'll have her talk about that later, because that was such a genius. That was just a brilliant genius idea.
Oh, yeah.
And you get her to tell you how hard it is. I mean, that is a tremendous amount of work, but I do think so many people, as we see, Catherine Holloman is here, and Catlaw, and the people, and Aaron and Nancy, who come to First Chapter Fun, get introduced to new books, you know, twice a week. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. All right. Well, not to interrupt that amazing conversation of First Chapter Fun, which we will come back to, but it looks like most of the people who are in the waiting room have trickled in. So I think I'll give my standard intro and then let you guys continue on with this wonderful conversation. So again, to everyone who is joining us, welcome. My name is Catherine Hunt. I am the director of the Lincoln Public Library in Lincoln, California. I see we have some people attending who are close to home and many from across not just the country, but including our neighbors in Canada. So welcome. We have about an hour slated for this conversation. And what we're going to have is just a really wonderful conversation between all of our authors who are here today. You can see all the names listed, and I'll do some more in-depth bios in just a moment. One thing that I do want to recommend everyone do is, if you're familiar with Zoom at this point, you know that there is an option down at the bottom of the screen that says Q&A. If you have questions that you would like to have answered by any of our participants, please drop them in that Q&A when you think of them. We will work on incorporating them into the conversation over the course of the next hour. Please don't drop them in the chat. Use the chat for things like saying where you're from, saying hi to someone. The Q&A is what we're going to be watching over the course of the conversation to incorporate in. So please use that Q&A option. If it does end up in the chat, we do have some staff who are keeping an eye on that to try and move it over. If you're not able to access the Q&A, if you're dialing in by phone, for example, we will have a little bit of time at the end to take questions over the phone or over speaker. But most of our questions we're going to answer and incorporate in the middle, where we can have a more robust conversation. So we really want to encourage you to take advantage of that Q&A feature as our authors discuss their work and their process. And with that, you are all not here to listen to me talk. So I am very excited to introduce our guests for today. We are incredibly lucky that they are sharing their time with us. We have with us Kellye Garrett, who is the author of the upcoming domestic suspense novel, Like a Sister. and the author of the acclaimed Detective by Day Lightweight Mysteries, the first of which won the Anthony, Agatha, Lefty, and Ippy Awards for Best First Novel. We also have Ed Aymar, who's an Anthony Award-nominated author, whose most recent thriller, They're Gone, was published in 2020 under his pseudonym, E.A. Barres, and received high praise from a variety of popular trade reviews, including a starred review from Kirkus. And we have Hannah Mary McKinnon, who has had a long and successful career in recruitment, but decided to bail on the corporate world in favor of writing. As a librarian, I can only commend this choice. Her first novel, Time After Time, was a lighthearted rom-com and was published in 2016. But she has moved over to the dark side of suspense, which includes her most recent novel, You'll Remember Me, which was published this past May. And our moderator for our conversation today is the one and only Hank Phillipi Ryan, USA Today bestselling author of 13 novels of suspense, a winner of multiple prestigious awards, including 5 Agathas, 4 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She's also the on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHTH-TV and has won 37 Emmys, 14 Edward R. Murrow Awards, and dozens of other honors for her journalism. National book reviews have called her a master at crafting suspenseful mysteries and a superb and gifted storyteller. And her novels have been named Best Thrillers of the Year by Library Journal, The New York Post, BookBub, and others. And her 2019 book is the acclaimed legal thriller, The Murder List, which won the Anthony Award for Best Novel of the Year. And her newest one is The First to Lie, which is a chilling psychological standalone that garnered a starred review from Publishers Weekly and is nominated for the Anthony Award for Best Novel and the Mary Higgins Clark Award. And she has another novel, Her Perfect Life, coming out in September. So with no further ado, Hank, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Here's a tiny bit of ado. This is what the cover looks
Gorgeous. It's a beautiful cover.
And it's
Lovely.
I really like it too. You guys, welcome. It's so nice to see you all. As you all were coming into the audience earlier tonight, it was kind of crazy because the 4 of us, well, the 6 of us were just talking. And finally, poor Catherine says, we need to do this event now. So we're all so happy to see each other and all so happy to see you all here tonight. It's interesting because we're all at sort of different points in the writing journey. Hannah Mary McKinnon brought us together tonight to celebrate the launch of her brand new You Will Remember Me, which is a Canadian bestseller for 2 whole weeks, which is incredibly, amazingly, impossibly difficult to do and wonderful. I'm flipping through my iPad here to show you Ed Aymar's They're Gone. We're trying to figure out why we included Ed tonight, because really he's a troublemaker and all he does is write fabulous books and help people. But, all right, so we'll bring him here. And we're also celebrating the fantastic Kellye Garrett, who's, look at this cover of her brand new book that comes out next year, right, Kellye? In 2022?
Yeah, March 8th, 2022.
March 8th, 2022. So babbling a little bit here, but we're all at different points in the writing process. And congratulations to you all for your mad success in everything you do. I want to talk about first your individual newest books, the idea of, was there a moment when that idea, the core of the idea emerged to you? And what was that moment? Hannah, you're celebrating your wonderful new book. This is essentially your book launch. Tell us about You Will Remember Me. Where did that come from?
So it came from a real life story that I heard and it stuck with me. And I noodled it around a little bit to build the story. So it's an amnesia thriller, You Will Remember Me, with 3 characters. A man who wakes up on a beach who doesn't know where he is or who he is, and 2 women who are both looking for someone. Lily is looking for her boyfriend Jack, who went missing after a swim, and Maya is searching for her estranged stepbrother Ash. But of course, we don't know if the man from the beach is Jack or Ash or neither or both. So the idea, or the story that generated the idea, was a man who went missing, a man from Toronto who went missing on a ski hill in Lake Placid. He saw his friends, he was there on a work trip, I think, and he said, I'm just going to go to the car and get something, and vanished. And people had no idea what had happened to him, and hours stretched into days, and they feared that he had died, that he'd fallen and perished from the cold on the mountainside or something. And he turned up in Sacramento 6 days later with his ski gear on and a credit card in his pocket, not a clue who he was, and completely bewildered by the whole situation. It turned out he had amnesia, probably from some kind of a blow to the head or something. So that got me thinking, first of all, how incredibly baffling the situation was and how terrifying it would be for him, but also the fact that he would have to trust the people who say they know him and tell him who he is, because he wouldn't know. And what if those people, this now moving from him, because everything worked out in the end for him, but spinning that to a character, what might happen if the people who tell you who you are and who they are do not have your best interests at heart? So
and that's such a brilliant thing to take from that. It's such a suspense writer thing to take from that, the uneasiness and the fish out of water and how you don't know who you are. And I want to talk more about that. When you talk about point of view, you don't have a point of view, right? We'll talk about that more in a minute. But Ed, you're gorgeous. I mean, your fans in the chat are saying, Ed is fabulous. Just look at his book cover, which we will do again. Yes, look, I look like I'm in it. What was the core of their Gone? What did that come from?
Well, first, thank you, Mom, for saying that about me being fabulous. I appreciate it.
He'll send the check later.
I will. She's not speaking to me. The story is about two women whose husbands are murdered the same night in the same way, and they're determined to find out why. And the idea came to me. I was at Printers Row Book Festival in Chicago, and I was hanging out with Susanna Calkins, who's a historical mystery writer, and she was telling me about a new book she's working on that took place during Al Capone's era in Chicago. And she was talking about the research she's done and this headline that happened after, I think it was, I forget what it was called, either I think it was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And one of the headlines referred to the widows of all the men who'd been killed as the bullet widows. And I was like, that is an amazing title. Can I steal that? And she was like, yeah, it's not mine. And I was like, but can I steal it? And she was like, okay. So I got her permission. And then the story just came from there, the idea that, and I just loved that title. And then the publisher changed it. Which is fine, but they know better than I do. But that was where the whole thing started, from a conversation with Susie.
That is so fascinating. The idea that when the switch clicks in your head, I mean, all of us have had this. Like, you think, oh, that's a good idea. That is a good idea. And I want to come back to that, because I think that's kind of fascinating from the standpoint of readers and writers. But Kellye, look at this cover for your fabulous book, Like a Sister.
That was the original title too, you guys. I was surprised my title actually made it. That's very rare for your title to make it all the way.
It is. And so we do want to talk about that. But tell us what's the core of that book? Where did it come from?
So similar to Hannah, it came from it's very loosely based actually on a headline I saw in the New York Daily News, and it said it was about like a pregnant reality star found dead in the Bronx with cocaine and no pants on. That was the headline, which I thought was a really disrespectful headline. Like, the way they did it was just so disrespectful. It was a Black woman. And I was just like fascinated with the idea of like, how did this glamorous reality star who was partying it up in downtown Manhattan end up dead in the Bronx, which is, such a whole different like world from downtown Manhattan. Like, why was she up there? What was going on? And I just remember like walking down the street at work one day, and it clicked on me, because, oh, she went to see her estranged sister. I was like, oh, okay, that's the story. And so the POV is from the estranged sister, who realizes that they haven't spoken in 2 years. And all of a sudden her sister was up there and she died. And so there's this guilt level of like, why was she coming to see me? And why didn't she make it? What happened that she overdosed? And she's not even sure if she really overdosed. So that's where the idea came from. I wanted to explore so many different things. I wanted to explore the idea of the strong Black woman, which is this kind of like thing we put on ourselves as Black women. I wanted to explore daddy-daughter issues. I wanted to explore sister issues. So it was just a really fun book to write, especially since my other series is such a fun, lightweight amateur detective series, to kind of do something that was more serious, but hopefully just as twisty and just as, fun to read. So.
Well, it's interesting because what does connect all of your books, so interestingly, is that each of your main characters are put in a world that's suddenly new to them. The whole world changes as a result of something that they didn't have any control over. And then they have to figure out what to do next. I know, Kellye, in your book, the sister, the main character, is from a completely different world than the dead sister she's trying to explore. And that takes her into a whole new world. Why does that work, do you all think? The big change, the fish out of water, the insistence on a journey. Kellye, talk a little bit about that.
I think for me, it's just, this idea of the uncomfort, being uncomfortable, and for me, I think that to me is like the scariest thing. Even like in like a Bouchercon, walking into a room of people you don't know, feeling like you don't belong. I think we all can relate to that. And so I think that's why it's such a prevalent thing in stories, to have a character who feels like they don't belong in the story, and kind of struggling and flowing and trying to figure out their place in this world that they've been shoved into.
I mean, and Ed, when somebody is married, they're in a situation that they think is going to be stable and solid, and then when their husband is killed, and someone else's husband is killed the same way, that's a link that they didn't know they had to someone else, that they have to figure out. One of the things that makes your book so wonderful is that that duality of those two people. Why did you decide to work on that? Why did you decide to explore that?
Well, it was also, a lot of that from the fish out of water, where I live, I write about DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and the three areas merge. You can drive through them without really realizing you've passed from Virginia to DC to Maryland sometimes. But once you're here, the residents of each of those areas consider them starkly different, and they are different. So I wanted to focus on what Northern Virginia, older woman would have in common or find in common with a 20-something Baltimore bartender, and even though they have these things in common, there's a very dramatic difference between them. I'm not sure they ever really, even though they sort of their paths intertwine, they ever really become friends.
Yeah, which is cool. I mean, but there is a bond that they have, a thing that happens to both of them that they have to deal with, which I love how you balance how each one would deal with that. I want to welcome Yasmin Ango here tonight, whose book is so awesome. Her name is Night, comes out in, when is it, Yasmin? Type in the chat when it is. I can't remember if it's November.
I think it's November.
Okay. But yes, and it's perfect and great and heartbreaking and wonderful. So do not miss Her Name is Night. That's great. And welcome. Hannah. And your main character is completely fish out of water. I mean, literally comes out, it starts out with him washing up on the beach and not knowing who she is. That amnesia thing is a tough thing to write about. How did you deal with that?
Badly initially. So I'm a plotter, and I plotted it all out, and I had come from writing my fourth book, Sister Dear, which was in comparison quite a smooth process. And I thought, yes, I've cracked it. I've written 4 books. I finally know what I'm doing. And then I met You Will Remember Me, and it slapped me around the face, because even though I plotted it substantially, I had not really thought about what it would be like to have a point of view character who has no memory. And that was really hard, because because when we build our characters and lay out our characters, we will include experiences or flashbacks or whatever. And I couldn't do that. And I started worrying, well, I have 3 point of view characters, so about 30,000 words if I want them to be balanced. How on earth am I going to get people to connect with this character and understand who he is and care about him if he doesn't know who he is and they don't either? So it was harder than I thought, actually. It was pretty. I don't think I'll do that again.
I mean, did you have to do a lot of research into amnesia and what kinds of amnesia there is? And I mean, the rules for what he could know and what he couldn't know?
I did. I looked at a lot of the different types of amnesia. So retrograde, which is the one he has when he can't remember his past. There's anterograde, when you can't form new memories, but you remember the past or part of it. And then you have transient global amnesia, which is generally a psychological fugue state, they call it, where you basically also lose everything. And that is generally when there's something, an event that has happened, some psychological trauma, and it's your brain, it's basically your body protecting itself. So I had to choose the type of amnesia. The saving grace was that no two cases are the same. They can be quite different. You might not lose all of your past. You might only lose 4 or 5 years. Some memories, earlier memories, might come back first. So there are lots of different cases, including Agatha Christie, who famously disappeared for 2 weeks. So I read all these different cases and decided, well, as long as I stay with the retrograde and I have little filaments and flashes of things that come back, but not a Hollywood everything comes rushing back at the same time moment, I can probably get away with it because no two brains are the same, and apparently no two cases of amnesia are either. So I did have a little bit of flexibility there.
Luckily for authors, that
yeah.
Sometimes it works that way, sometimes it doesn't. Or you could even use amnesia. Say you had amnesia and you didn't, and this is what all of our books are about. Yes. Is how the main character, the one we choose to be on the train with, who the main character believes and why they believe them, and also what new rules they have to deal with in their new world when they're exploring a place that they've never been before. Kellye, talk about that when the sister comes to a part of the world that she isn't familiar with, how she has to deal with those rules, and how you researched that and discovered that and experienced that.
So the character, her name is Lena, and so they're half sisters. Her half sister dies, and so their dad's like a really well known, kind of like a Diddy, Suge Knight type of hip hop mogul. But Lena's the older sister, and so he kind of like left her mom. There it is. There's the cover. He left her mom for Desiree's mother. And so Lena kind of feels like her father abandoned her when he abandoned her mother. And so she kind of has always kept him at arm's length. So when Desiree dies, she kind of has to jump back into that world. She has to see her dad more to kind of find out what happened to her sister. She has to, go into this world of music and reality stars and Instagram influencers, which is something that she's always kind of shunned, or she always felt like she was looking, outside looking in. And so now she's in it. So that was kind of fun to explore. In terms of music, I worked for a media company. We do concerts and things like that. So I've been backstage at shows and things like that. So I kind of didn't have to really do any research just because I've done that for like my job and stuff. So it was kind of fun to kind of bring that kind of world that I had to do for work into.
Did you do that on purpose? Did you choose that world because you knew that world?
I don't like to do research, guys. So yeah, that's why I did it. I'm not like going to be like, yes, I went into retrograde. Like, yeah, I'm not that person. So I tend to I used to be a TV writer, which is why my first series is about Hollywood. So yeah, I tend to write about things I know. I'm lazy.
That's smart. That's economical.
That's cool. Because it's cool, isn't it? Because it's cool, isn't it? Because I'm looking down at you as if because you're on my screen down here, Hannah, but I know it looks like I'm looking at nothing. But that's cool, isn't it? That we all know things, that we all bring things to our books, that we almost didn't realize that we knew better than any other person knows our own experiences. And
I know, but Hank, because your new book, isn't it about a TV reporter? And we've had books about TV reporters before. Right?
Yeah, oh yeah, heck yes. All my books are about TV reporters, except the ones that are about lawyers. My husband's a lawyer.
I was gonna say your husband's a lawyer, so you and I, we're like this, yeah. Oh, Hank, we're like this.
I completely agree, and I know I actively tried to make the murder list not about a reporter, but then a big character is a reporter. Because what are you going to do?
Embrace it, just embrace it.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me, there's this quote, and it's going to be really, this is the stuffiest thing I could say, but as F. Scott Fitzgerald, now I don't actually know the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of every writer writes about the same thing for their entire life. And I think that's true. Like there's always, he was probably referring to a theme, but I do think there's a sense of character that you always kind of see. You can find in a writer's style throughout their work, whether it's a theme, whether it's character, setting, what have you.
Well, what do you think is that? I mean, I know I write about justice. That's every single one of my books, no matter what it is about justice. And there is a voice of Ed. I mean, Ed, you have a voice that your books sound like you. How do you think about that? And how, what do you bring to your books when you think about Ed, the writer? What goes into it, like Kellye's music experience?
I don't know. I've been trying to think about that recently a lot. It's sort of, I mean, I hate this term, but it's kind of like, what's your brand? But it's a fair question, because I think so many writers, I mean, from the publishing side, that's part of what keeps you successful, is that readers, I mean, people tend to read, I think, the same thing a lot. So they, the same writers they'll go back to over and over again if they like them. For me, I think a lot of times I'm writing about male violence and its effects.
Why is that
on people? I don't know. It's something I've witnessed and experienced, and it's, and I've known, what's more pertinent is I've known a lot of people who have been affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, there's really no champion for them, or no one defending that. So it's sort of, I don't think these books and my writing's filling that role, but it's just, it's something that kind of, I want to explore and develop.
Well, you care about it. I mean, you care about it. And I think that's when all of us can have, can get the reader to care, can get the reader to connect with what we're talking about. That's why readers read. You think, I can't wait to see what happens because I care about this person. I mean, Hannah, it's also a challenge for you in writing about someone with amnesia, to put them in a situation where they might be manipulated and don't know if people care about them. And then your background too, in human resources, for instance, is talking to people and seeing how they look and seeing how they respond and seeing what they'll do to get what they want.
There's definitely a lot of manipulation in my books. A lot of messed up families, which I haven't experienced firsthand. I come from a lovely family, so it's definitely not personal experience. But yeah, there's definitely always somebody manipulating somebody who has lots of secrets that they don't want to have uncovered, and of course they bubble to the surface because that's how you get a story. And I do. What I try very hard to do is put ordinary people into extraordinary circumstances and then make it worse. That's generally what I do. Is just, okay, well, what would happen if now this happened and made it 10 times worse, and just see what the characters would do. Look at the different options and think about how they would handle those, and then just make it worse again and again.
And you must have had so many experiences in your pre-writing life where you dealt with people who wanted you to do something or were trying to convince you to do something, and you take all that psychology and put that so beautifully in your book.
Thank you. A fair few, yeah. I won't name names though, but yes.
And so we all do bring those different things to the book. And the other thing that you all have in common that I love is that you've each written, you started out writing a certain thing, and then you changed to write something else. Talk a little bit about what happened to make you think, I'm going to write something else now. I mean, Kellye, you totally took your wild success that you could have done forever, and people would have embraced that forever. And you thought, and you said, no, you know what? I'm gonna try something else. Why did you do that?
What happened is my publisher emailed me 3 days before my birthday to tell me that they were closing. So that's what happened.
So talk about pulling the rug out from under you. Right?
Wow.
And so I think I was like working on book 3 of my series. And at the time I was kind of like, writing a series is hard because I don't see a lot of people like Jenna Ivanovich who do like 30 like books or like a series, or like Robert B. Parker who has how many Spencer books, because like I was making the same jokes in like each book, and I'd be like, wait, I made that joke already. And like then the same idea of like Ed was saying, like the expectations of the series for people who've read the first 2, but how to keep it fresh and different so it's still surprising. And so that was, I was struggling with that. So I kind of knew, I was like, I don't think I want to do another series. You want to try a standalone. And so that had its own difficulties of having spent like pretty much 5 or 6 years with the same characters in the series. Now I had to like do new people and like people I did not know that well. I had to like figure this all out myself. And also I was struggling with the tone of the book too. Like I would have my character Lena do something. I'm like, oh no, she wouldn't do that. That's what Dana from my series would do. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting.
And the other thing that's so interesting about, I mean, I changed from series to writing standalone as well. And the thing that you realize is that in a series, you know, your fans knew that Dana was not going to die because she was going to come back. So the suspense had to come from some external thing that you had to make people care about, but that wasn't going to kill her. So that's a very difficult balance. Although you get your world and you know what the deal is. In a standalone, anybody can die. Yeah. You know, anything can happen. Anybody can be good. Was that powerful for you?
I did do, I have, like, I killed a character very randomly. I was like, I'm just going to kill this person. So that was fun. So yeah, it was cool to, I guess, have that new world, but also, like I said, scary. And I don't think I ever thought Lena was going to like die. So I'm like out of all the 4 of us, I'm probably like the lightest stuff, but it was fun putting her through hell, I guess, like Hannah said. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Hannah, when you in writing standalones, you have to, I mean, as Kellye was saying, you can't tell the same joke again. You have to come up with a completely new idea in a completely new world with completely new people, and you can't call somebody the name you can't call her Elizabeth again, or you can't call her whatever again, and it can't be in the same place. I mean, if I say to you, how do you know what's a good idea? How do you know what will? I mean, I know I'm asking you this because I know you have a great idea that you're not going to tell, and I promise I will not tell it, but I know it's a great idea. How does it feel to you when you think, oh, that's the one?
I think it's when the idea won't let me go. Oh. When it just, because I'll think of different things and that might be an idea. I'll hear something or see something, and then if it sticks with me, because I don't write everything down. I'll write some down, but I don't write everything down, or I'll write something down and then forget about it. But it's generally the ones that pop into my head or come from something and that hang around. They linger and they won't let me go. And I start thinking about, well, who is this character? Why has whatever it is that has happened to them? And who were they before? And I start thinking about it more and more. And that's generally when I know that it's a good idea. But having said that, I just handed in the outline for book, what is it, 7? Yeah, so I was going to say 8. No, I was one ahead of myself for book 7. And it took me a number of tries before my agent and I found something that my editor liked, which was a little bit discombobulated because that had never happened before. They'd always gone with the first idea that I'd pitched. So I don't know what that was about, but generally, yeah, that it's the idea that won't let me go. The one that I'll think of as I'm going to sleep and remember in the morning, thinking, yeah, there's something there.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question, Hannah? Hannah, did you like now that the idea that they picked? Are you happy now that they picked that? Like, I'm glad that this is the one I'm writing.
Well, they haven't picked it yet, so
Oh, okay, never mind.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully, I really, really loved one of the ideas. So we pitched 4. One of them I was okay with. One of them I really liked, and I was certain they would go for it. The third one, I thought maybe they would, but it was about sisters again, and I had Sister Dear last year, so I thought I'll pitch it and we'll see. But you're right. The fourth one, the one that we've just pitched, that I'm hoping they will like, is my favorite now. So yeah, it's weird. It grew on me.
Can I also ask a question to Hannah? Do you mind, Hank?
No,
Because we're celebrating, this event's in celebration of your book. You talked about the research that you did for this, and I know just from our friendship how a particular an outliner and how set you are on your on how you craft a novel. Did this one take longer given the amount of research you had to do?
You Will Remember Me was a pain in my backside to write. It was,
I don't do it.
It wasn't just the research though. It was a complex storyline. It was the whole amnesia thing. And you all know Alex Brady, A.F. Brady, right? She's a psychologist, but also an author. And she very generously wrote my first draft. No, she didn't. She read my first draft. That'd be fun if she wrote
that. That would be very generous.
Come over.
I need to be a friend like that.
So she read it because there's also an element of opioids in there, which I know nothing about. And because she's a psychotherapist and an addictions counselor, she had tons of experience with people who have been in that situation. And she wrote me an email and she said, how direct can I be? And I said, go full New York on me, because she's from New York City. Just go for it. And she said, you've never met a drug dealer, have you?
That's a good thing, though. Be proud of that.
No. And she started laughing and she said, well, they don't show up on time, they don't give you what you ask for, and they're not polite. So cut out the British stuff that you put in there, because it's not the way it works.
I want to read The Nice Drug Dealer. Can you send me that draft so I can see The Nice Drug Dealer?
Catherine Lowry is saying Hannah is the sweetest person with the most devious mind, but still you're going to make a sweet drug dealer.
Yes. And a sweet hooker in the book for next year as well. She's also very lovely.
Well, okay, she could be lovely. He could be lovely. That's great. And what about you? Talk a little bit about that, about how you get to what you're writing about. How do you get to in each individual new world that you make? How do you decide the rules for that world and how that's going to be?
Well, I like to write I try to write books that are very close to the present day, because I want to write books, like I mentioned, I write about this area, and I've always been interested in books that tie into stuff that you kind of go, oh, I know that, or I was there when that happened, or I've been down that same street, which made it very difficult to write during the pandemic, because it was something that I wanted to, that was incorporated in the next thing I'm working on. And then I had to shy away from that after talking with so many people who were like, I flat out don't want to read a book about the pandemic or that takes place during the pandemic. But I found that with They're Gone, and what I found with my writing in general is that there's been a character that I write about, and usually it's kind of the side character, but that character steals the show. And that's the character that when people read the book, they tell me that they were most drawn to. And I like that character. That character is fun to write, but I just don't think of it as somebody who can hold a series, for example, or hold a whole book. But they like that character more than the main character usually. So I've noticed that archetype is sort of becoming more and more into the focus of what I write. And with the next book, and I told my agent when I sent it to her, I feel this is the most Ed book I could have written, because I just went full. This is her book.
What is that? Like, no, what does that mean? What does that mean? What's an Ed book?
I felt like there was always a undercurrent in my books, and I took that undercurrent, and I haven't really thought about this that much, which is why I'm being a little vague. But like the undercurrent is now the main current.
Well, but
So
what Kellye is
the
saying,
wacky character is now the main character. Basically,
Exactly,
you're writing about
exactly.
yourself. You're writing about yourself.
Not me at all.
but you see what I'm hearing you say too, Kellye, is exactly, I'm with you so much, is that when you as a writer sometimes, and you all talk about this, when you have the secondary character, you're not as careful with them. You know, they can say anything, they can do anything. They don't have to be so perfect or so on the trail. They can bring up wild things or try, have a bad idea or say something terrible, because they're not really the one that you're focusing on. So they kind of get interesting. Is that what sort of happened to you? Go ahead.
So for my book series, my main character is this woman who used to be an actress who's trying to find herself. And so I'm like super sarcastic, in case you didn't realize that. And so my character is really sarcastic. And like when we were trying to sell the book, we got a lot of notes that she might have been a little bit, not too mean, but I think that was what they were kind of trying to say. Because it was, my book technically was like an amateur detective, kind of like a cozy, even though it didn't have the tropes of a cozy. And so I just took all the mean lines and gave them to the side character, the best friend. And like, so you're right, she became like the quirky character that can say anything, and it's kind of fun. And because again, like it's the pressure of like, so I was like, oh, I have to like the character. I didn't like anybody in this book, or like even or hate them, hate to love, like hate them so much. You have to have a strong reaction. And so with the side characters, there's not that not holding the books.
Right. There's not that pressure to be anything. They're just the sidekick. Yeah. I think let's talk about that though. What do you guys think about the having to like the main character, have somebody to root for?
You know what? I have to care about them. And even so, even if I hate them, I have to hate. Hate is such a strong emotion. So like I have to care about them to either want them to, even at the end, if they get away with it, I want to be like, oh, I hate that person, but I understand why they got away with it. And so that's so key. It doesn't necessarily be like I like them, but I like to hate them. But I have to have a feeling, I have to care for them in some way.
They have to be interesting. They have to be compelling. You have to really wonder what's going to happen to them. I mean, Hannah, you juggled that like crazy in Sister Dear and in You Will Remember Me. Because, not everybody is lovely in those books. And they turn out to be less lovely than you thought. And I know you love writing to the dark side. But
I do.
How do you juggle the idea that your readers always say, I want to root for someone?
I try not to think about it too much, to be honest, because if I did, I probably wouldn't write the books the way I write them. And I tend to base it more on, why is the character the way they are? How did they become who they are when we start off in chapter 1? So that people understand them. If I have an unlikable character, and also they can't just be unlikable all the time. I mean, nobody's horrible all the time. Well, maybe some people are, but most people are a bit more layered. So I find it really interesting if I have a character that is that people perhaps won't like, to really dig into why they've become the way they are, what happened to them, what choices have they made, so that if they make really bad choices, that people understand why they're doing that. And I mean, I write crime fiction. I don't write rom-coms anymore. I wrote one rom-com, and even in the rom-com I had people that were unlikable, because if everybody's likable, there's no conflict. And if there's no conflict, there's no tension. And if there's no tension, there's no point, as far as I'm concerned. I'll just go and watch Strawberry Shortcake, and there's probably even tension in that, I'm sure, from what I can remember.
Of course. Do you agree with that, Ed, about the tension, the necessity for tension and conflict, and that's what makes the story go?
Yeah, definitely. And, I, not to turn it back to Hannah, but one of the things with regards to I just want to touch on something she was saying that also ties in attention is I agree with that. But I love what she does with her books, because Hannah has, I think, some of the best endings in crime fiction.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
They're
So unexpected.
right. And they're not, but they are the proper ending, in the sense that an ending has to be, inevitable, but, what's the term? Inevitable, but
Surprising.
yeah. But and understandable, but I think it takes a lot of guts to do that, to write that way. They're the kind of endings that generally linger with you. It sort of changed. Reading her books has changed some of my philosophy about writing.
And well, that's interesting. That goes with what someone is asking. Linda is asking in the Q&A whether you, Ed, outline, and that sort of gets to the point of, do you all know how your stories will end before you start? I mean, that's the key of an outline, is that, okay, I know what the ending is. Did you know what your ending was, Ed?
Yeah, I think I did with that book. Maybe not. I'm not sure. Sometimes I do. I definitely outline. I have to. If not, it's just, usually it's going to be wasted paper. So I have to outline. I do deviate from the outline at times, and I'm fully aware that about halfway through I'm going to discard the rest of the outline, because I've thought of a better thing, and I'm going to change it around. So yeah. What about you, Hank? You've asked us all the questions, but
Oh no, I don't have any idea what's going to happen next. Not. I sit down and I think, well, and it's kind of interesting, because that's what gets me to the computer every day. Is I think, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next, and then things happen, and if I'm lucky, and then I think, wow, could you believe that? And then people say, the ending of your book, you really surprised me, and I say, yeah, wasn't that a surprise? Who'd have thought that would happen? But this is the cool thing, and I wonder if you all have had this. And Sue Grafton used to call it the magic. When something happened, and Ed, you were talking about it, deviating from this outline, when you thought you knew what the story was, but the characters, and forgive me, but you all know what I'm talking about, the characters or your subconscious thought it was something else. Have you had that, Hannah? You're nodding.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the more I write, the more I outline, and I find it so fascinating that you don't. And interestingly, yesterday, I was at an event with Tracy Clark and Samantha Downing, Kate Holland, and Tracy and Samantha don't outline. Kate does. And Samantha said that her publisher asked her to outline a book, and she outlined it, and then she wrote it, and she was bored to tears with it, and they actually chucked it out because she found that, well, I know what's happened now. I know what the story is. I'm bored. I don't want to write it anymore, which I find completely fascinating. I'm like, Ed, I need to know where I'm going, but I'm also open to change. So the biggest change in endings was in The Neighbors, actually, where I had a more hopeful classic ending in mind. And my characters just said, no, not doing that. And off they went. And it was a much better ending, in my opinion, than the one I'd originally thought of. So like Ed, I might get to the halfway or 3/4 and think, I think I've got a better ending. But when I outline, I need to know the beginning and I need to know the end. So I have the goal in mind where I want to get to, but then it might change.
And this is answering one of our attendees' questions. Linda was saying that, in The Neighbors, you had this idea for a book, for a story, which could happen to anyone, that your old boyfriend moves in next door. But then she said in all caps, you took it to a whole new level. And I wonder, and thank you, Linda. And I wonder whether it's what you just said, that the characters sort of took it to a whole new level for you.
They did. They really did. There was one scene, a pivotal scene, and I can't say what it is or I'm going to spoil it, but where something happened and it was almost as if I had two doors. You would go through door A, and it's the regular ending that you had imagined. Go through door B, and who knows what's going to happen. And I went through door B, and it was much more fun to do that. Oh, there it is.
You're a total door B person, Hannah.
I love being in situations I've never been in before. So I'm that's what I used to do in before my career. So I'm quite happy doing standalones and discovering a whole new world each time.
Do you know the ending, Kellye? Did you know the ending of Like a Sister?
Yeah, I'm super plotter. I'm similar to Hannah and Ed, where it's the same thing. Where I'll do a really long 20, I think my series I would do 25-page outlines.
Really?
I'd get to act 3, and I would be like, oh, this doesn't work what I thought, and I would just redo it. I spent some time with the characters. I'm like not that person who thinks of my characters as real people, and I kind of admire people who do. Like in my mind, it's very much a character. But like, yeah, I have to know the major like twists. And those tend to always stay the same.
How long does it take you to do that then? Does it take you, I mean, I always think, why am I spending a month writing an outline when I could just be writing the book?
Oh, the blank page scares me. Like I think if you ever send me an email, like my email says wasn't that Dorothy? What is it? I hate writing. I love having written.
Yeah,
Dorothy Parker. Yeah, Dorothy Parker quote. And so like the blank page scares me. So having the outline is like a little blanket, like a safety blanket for me of being like, oh, I can do this because I know what I'm doing versus, although Valerie Burns the same way with like she's a pantser who's like, it's no fun for me. Like I admire those people too, but like that's just not.
Well, I'm not sure if it's fun. I would call it fun to type chapter 1 and think, yeah, okay, now what? I mean, this is a real, for all of us, no matter if you have an outline or not. And at some point, Kellye, you have a blank page. You have a blank page where you have to put an outline of something, which is, I don't want to say this to you because I know you have your way, but it's just as daunting. You still have a blank page.
I'm going to tell my agent, I'm like, Hank scared me. I'm never writing another book again.
Yeah, thanks. But you're not committed to it. And maybe that's the difference.
I just think I think for me, like the idea of like, especially once you have a contract, the idea of this is chapter 1 and it's blank. And I know in a year or 2 years, it's going to be a book that's on the shelf that people are going to read and judge. That's scary as heck to me.
It's kind of cool though. It's kind of cool. Do you all, Ed and Hannah, at that moment that Kellye's talking about, sometimes I think, well, this time next August, I'll be done. I have to be done.
That's true. That's a good idea. But
but
the idea of it'll be done and then it'll be people on Goodreads with 1 star.
Well, I think there is the knowledge that we can fret and we can worry, but it's going to work. We're going to do it. Ed, you do it, right? You can fret and worry or, fear that this is going to be the day that you can't, but you can. How do you do that?
I mean, for me, I was writing for a long time before I got published. So I've had like a set routine, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, for me, it's like it's just going to happen. I mean, it doesn't really, it's almost like kind of like, it's like a job. I mean, it is a job, right? But it's very much in that same vein where it's just, there's a completed point and it's just going to get met. At this point, it's kind of rote, I suppose.
Or it's just part of you.
Yeah.
It's what you do. And I talk about part of what you do. I don't know if you've seen in the chat, Kellye, but your agent is here. And
she's going to yell at you.
Yes, you have to write more books, LOL. And Aaron is saying to me, you better fix this, Hank. We need lots more Kellye Garrett.
That's right, Hank. Make me feel better.
You clearly got this. You don't have too much more time. And I don't want to leave you all without talking a little bit about how much the three of you give back to writing world. You've really made this such a big part of your life, Kellye, with Sisters in Crime and Crime Writers of Color, and Ed with The Big Thrill and ITW and your Noir at the Bar. And Hannah, you started First Chapter Fun. You've just all been so supportive and so inclusive and so embracing other writers and readers. Where did that come from? Why did you decide to, I mean, anybody start? Why is that important? Not just the book part, but the writer part, the author part, the community part, the reader part.
For me, I was just selfish. Like I like, everyone knows this when it comes to inclusivity, crime fiction and publishing in general is not very inclusive, not very kind to marginalized people, especially compared to straight cis white men. And so I am a person who likes to read all types of books, but I want to see people who look like me and my mom and my sister and my niece who's 7 in books. And so the reason why I started Primaries of Color with Walter Mosley and Gigi Pondian is because I wanted to find more books by people of color, crime fiction, and I found so many books just from meeting people through that group. So it was a super selfish reason for me to start to co-found that organization. That's where this came from, being selfish in a way.
Yes, but you call it being selfish, but really everybody else on the planet calls it being wise and inclusive and embracing and wonderful and life-changing. You must be aware of how much difference you've made in people's lives.
I mean, yes, I'm not going to say oh no, I'm very proud that I'm outspoken and people listen to me when I say things. I'm very proud of that. I feel like I've worked hard for that. But also people have supported me and they held my hand, and Ed's helped me, and Hannah's offered me things too. So people have helped me too. So I'm just kind of doing what people have done for me. So that's how I see it. And I think especially for people of color or people who are marginalized in crime fiction, we can't be competitive. We have to be each other's cheerleaders. And I think that's one of the great things about Primaries of Color is that we all cheerlead each other. If Ed cheerleads me and I cheerlead Yaz, and and Sean cheerleads, I don't know, Valerie, we just all are big cheerleaders of each other because we know how tough it is. So for us in particular.
It's as I said, it's a life-changing thing, and everybody is incredibly grateful from in every way. And Ed too. I mean, you do Noir at the Bar. You did ITW for so long, and The Big Thrill. Your inclusivity and your embracing of other people has just been such a part of your writing life and your career.
Anything Ed does, I feel like I want Ed to do that more for himself when he does other people.
Well, I don't. I mean, there's 3 things. One is I made, like everybody has, I made mistakes in publishing early on, and I, wish I'd had more guidance with that, which is why I liked working with debuts for that reason. The other thing is, like Kellye said, I mean, this is we're such a supportive community, and we need our books to do well. Not just our own books, we need other books to do well. I mean, when Blacktop Wasteland did so well last year, that was it was terrific. Even though Sean is as a guy, we were all so happy for his book. We need books to do well, to be there's no jealousy there. If people are talking about books, that helps all of us. Yeah. So it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Envy's never really come into it. It's just about support. And then the third thing is I just like attention.
Okay. You're hilarious. This is why I said at the beginning that you're totally a troublemaker, and the audience was ready for you to be.
Well, I was serious about that last part. Very much need attention and praise.
Well, being a writer is one way to get that. That's for sure. Kind of in a way. I mean, Hannah has, Hannah's starting First Chapter Fun just out of complete love and support of other authors. And where did that come from, Hannah? It's just so genius.
Well, first of all, I think we have to not forget how much you do for the writing community, please, because it's insane, and we love you for it and thank you for it, including for being here tonight and moderating. First Chapter Fun was it was the beginning of the pandemic for us here in Canada. It was March 16th. I was on a messenger chat with about 14 people. We're all collectively freaking out because we have books coming out and events being cancelled, and how's this going to work, and what are we going to do, and OMG and all the rest of it, and how can we support each other. And said, what if I read the first chapter of your book out loud, live on Facebook and Instagram? And I really just thought it would be a temporary thing. Maybe half a dozen, maybe a dozen people would say yes. And I started the very next day, and it just grew. And I think when we think back about, in March 2020, when it was the beginning of the pandemic for us here, there was a lot of anxiety. I remember refreshing my browser constantly, looking at the number of cases, and it was about 150,000 worldwide. Now we're at 180 million or something. So it was a very different. I don't know if it's because the amount of time that has passed that it feels less scary, or because we have vaccines and we seem to be coming out of it. But I was really terrified. And a little bit like Kellye, selfishly, it was a big distraction for me, because I no longer had time to watch the news and refresh my browser all the time. So it was partially that, but I was really, really surprised by this whole community when the Neighbours came out, or before the Neighbours came out, and I went to VoucherCon, which happened to be in Toronto in 2017 in October. And I went there and I knew nobody. I knew Kimberly Bell and I knew Mary Kubika, because I begged them if they would blurb the book, and they said yes. So they had no idea who I was, and they said yes. And they introduced me to so many people. And since then, I've just been continually in awe of how generous and supportive the community is. So I wanted to do the same. And then when you asked me about First Chapter Fun and suggested teaming up and continuing with the project, and it's just been such a delight. And here we are over a year later.
That's because you were going to stop. 53, she did, you all, 53 days in a row.
Yeah.
Live, reading people's first chapters. I mean, one or two times, that's fun, and that's, kind of an adventure. But 53 times in a row. And Hannah, you should all know this, that Hannah was saying, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's just so much work. I have to write a book.
I need to write,
because you have your real job. And I just didn't want that to go away. I mean, I just think that the service you were doing for the community really needed to stay. And we've read Ed and we've read Kellye, and we will do them for as long as you both turn out books, which we are totally thrilled about. We're running to the end of time. Let me just see if there's any quick questions. This is a good question from Joyce. And then we have one more question from Aaron. And then, oh my gosh, let me do this really, really fast, because I know you all won't want to be here much longer. But quickly, lightning round. Let me ask Joyce's question in a different way. Does the first line of your book, she wanted to know how you come up with that. That's this big philosophical thing. But which I love, did the first line of your current book the same as it was during the first draft?
Yes. That's the short answer.
Yeah. For me, the first line's always been, I found out my sister was back in town from Instagram. I found out she died from the New York Daily News. It's always been the first two lines of the book.
Can't do better than that.
No, my first changes.
It does.
Yeah, I work on it all the way to the end of the book.
And what is it that, and I think this is one of the things that we all want to know, and Joyce too, is what is it that makes that be good? What is it that makes you say, ooh, that's the first line?
Wow.
Yeah. I guess I feel like it has, I don't know. It's tricky. It's tricky. I guess if you just know, when you know, right?
Yep. I think that's the only answer. That is the only answer. And Catherine Lowry is saying, do you have any writing quirks? Favorite drink, favorite time of day to write, something you need nearby when you write? Anybody have that?
Yeah, I do. And I'll go first with this. I hate this, but a few years ago, I started waking up at like 4:30 in the morning to write, and it works. And I just wish it didn't. So I have, because I'm not a morning person, but for some reason, things just work better then.
People I talk to who write in the morning, which I do not understand, my head would be clonked on the computer, say that your brain has no filter at that time. It's just open, and the pressure and the stress hasn't arrived. Do you think maybe that's it?
Yeah, and also, honestly, I mean, a good night's sleep uh, really cures so much. So
That
at the end of a day, I might be exhausted and exasperated, tired. Morning, I'm usually, I don't know, sleep helps.
sleep, that is my motto. I've got to tell you. Kellye, what about you? Do you have a quirk, a time?
A quirk is that I can't write at my desk. Like I have a desk that I've never written at. So like I'll write in my bed, I'll write on the couch, I'll literally be on the floor, like laid out writing. But I just don't write at a desk. I
Any
have a desk.
ideas of why?
I think because again, it's scary. This idea of like that's officially writing. Like I'm writing scares me. So I think not being on my bed, like I'm not really writing. I'm just typing some things on my computer.
Do you think Michelle, your agent, knows that you fool yourself every day?
I think Michelle knows that I don't like to write. I feel like she has to like check, like she checks on me, like, hey, how's that draft coming? Because she knows I don't like writing.
Well, apparently that works. Apparently that works. Hannah, how about you?
I need to have a tidy desk, because if I have an untidy desk, I feel my brain's cluttered. I hate it. And when I'm writing my first skeleton draft, I'll sit where I am now, which is the spare room, with a laptop and a dodgy Wi-Fi connection, switch my phone off or to silent and leave it downstairs. And I get so much more done.
No, I can imagine, because you're not distracted.
Not at all, yeah.
That's like sprinting, I guess, in a way. Like
Hank,
you just like spend 25 minutes just writing and not doing anything else.
That helps too. How about you, Hank?
Yeah, what about you,
You
Hank?
must have some quirks.
My favorite place to write, I have no quirks. My favorite place to write is on airplanes, because you're in this place and you can't get off. And if you're writing, it's like a deadline. I'm going to leave Boston at this time. I'm going to arrive in San Francisco in 5 hours, and I'm going to write for 5 solid hours, and nobody's going to bother me. And if I'm working, then nobody will talk to me. So I love when nobody talks to me on planes. I can just have my Diet Coke and those delicious little crackers, popcorners, and write. And I'm just not distracted. When I'm home, it's like I have to do the laundry, and whatever, I have to make dinner, and maybe the mail is here. Ooh, the mail, the high point of the day. So I think that focus, sometimes I tell the timer, whose name I won't say because she'll answer, to set the timer for 34 minutes. And I promise myself that I will not stop writing or answer my email or check the web or anything like that, not get a Diet Coke or do anything for 34 minutes.
Why 34?
Well, I think because it's long enough to be long, but it's not like 45 whole minutes. That's way too, I couldn't do that.
It's doable, right?
It's doable. And that's the key. That's the key, Kellye. I pick a goal that's doable, because writing a whole book is really hard, but writing for 34 minutes, I can do that.
That's how I feel about outlines. An outline's doable.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. That's the answer. Okay, so we came up with the answer to the okay, I love
Make it doable. Make it doable.
Yeah,
exactly. I love that. And with that, I think we are like so over time. The Lincoln Public Library is going to kill me now. But I want to thank you all so much.
Thank you, Hank, for being a wonderful moderator.
Yeah, thank you, Hank.
Guys,
You're
we'll have to
terrific.
get together, all of us and the moderators. Us and the attendees. We'll have to get together and do this in person. But let me close by saying we have proven to you tonight. I hope you'll look for Like a Sister,
Pre-order.
gorgeous new book. I hope you'll look for They're Gone, fabulous
now.
suspense, and for the brand new fabulous bestseller, You Will Remember Me.
Yes.
That we are celebrating tonight the launch of Hannah Mary McKinnon's new book, who brought us all together tonight. And as I was saying, we have proven to you that it is always safe, no matter what it is outside. It's always safe inside a book. And we are so thrilled to be here tonight to talk with you about that. Catherine, thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you. And yes, again, to all of our attendees, thank you for taking part. And you can pick up all of those great books at your local library, shameless plug, or jump on bookshop.org if you want a copy that is yours to keep forever. Bookshop.org will connect you with a locally owned bookstore near you that would very much appreciate your support and our authors would support that as well. So all four of you, thank you so much for spending your evenings with us. And we really appreciate all of your time in this wonderful conversation about your work and your process.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
having
much
us.
for having us.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank you.
much. This was terrific.
Absolutely. Well, we'll catch all of our attendees at our next event, and have a wonderful night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.